Welcome and thank you for your time. We're going to be spending the next 45 minutes with you talking specifically about how multi-property companies are really reducing waste services and costs, and how we're helping them do that along the way. I've got an expert panel that I'll introduce in a little bit here, but before we go too far, what I'd like to do is first take a quick step back and tell you a little bit about SIB. The thing that I always like to start with is talking about the one area that we are most passionate about, and that is our clients. Our focus is really to help make sure that we are at all times helping our clients save money and not overpay on any of the services that they're investing in. And today there's so much going on. Every single person we talk to is wearing 2, 3, 4, 5 different hats in some instances. And what we know is that our clients are forced to compromise their focus because they can't multiply themselves. Our goal is really to be that force multiplier for them, as we are an organization that is stacked with well-connected, deep insider experts that can give them back not only time, but money and resources, and help make sure that we're providing them the opportunity to reinvest those resources into the operations that help drive growth and sustainability. To give you a little bit more information, I always like to start talking about what we're not. So first and foremost, what we are not is a service provider. And what that allows us to do is be completely independent and objective. And that means that everything we're doing, we are doing for the client that we're working with. Our focus is to really make sure that we're across a number of different areas, looking at opportunities to reduce costs, reduce waste and spend, and optimize their vendor relationships, both through looking at the relationships and actually helping them optimize the structures, driving efficiencies, and doing all of this without disrupting their operations. Just to give you a couple of quick examples, on average, we're finding anywhere about 30 to 31% average gross savings when it comes to waste. And as our team is constantly looking at invoices, our waste team specifically is constantly looking at invoices, about every month of all the invoices we're looking at every month, we found at least about 10% in billing errors in all of those. And that's been pretty consistent. So you can imagine the volume that we're looking at and the volume of billing errors that we catch. Before, again, I go too far down, I just want to kind of take a step back here. So SIB is a professional services organization where we're focused on cost optimization and contract compliance. We help across a number of different areas, really over 50 different spend categories, having done this for over 35 years and operating in one of the largest spend data sets out there in the world. Today, specifically, we're going to focus on waste. We have a great panel of experts that I'm going to introduce you to. And the agenda for today that they're going to be going through is really just taking a step back to talk about the state of the state. What are we seeing in our deep expertise and vast time of experience in this particular area when it comes to the cost of waste management? We have a great case study we're going to talk through with you as well. Talk about strategies on identifying and capturing those savings, and then really talk about the role that data has played and will continue to play when it comes to cost control and transparency. And then finishing up with our little conversation about sustainability and compliance, which is a huge topic right now, especially in this area. And then we've got room for Q&A. Just a quick side note, as you are thinking of questions throughout the session here today, please drop that in the chat. I'll definitely, there should be a Q&A session there for you. Please make sure you're dropping your questions. We'll got time at the end to make sure we address those questions. And if for any reason we run out of time, we'll certainly include it in the follow-up as well. So to get us started, today is going to be a little bit different. We actually have a panel of experts, and not just a panel of any experts. We have a consolidated over 4 decades of experience here for you today. I won't do it justice, so I'm actually going to kick it over to Cory to give everybody a little bit of background. And I think as we'll go through, you'll start to understand the level of depth that we bring to every area of expertise that we support our clients with. So Cory, if you wouldn't mind giving everybody a quick background and intro of yourself and handing it over to Steve, that would be great.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Nami, and thanks to everyone for joining. My name's Cory Brown. I have been leading our waste division at SIB for 12 years now, and looking forward to sharing some insight on the waste industry with everyone here today.
Thanks, Cory. I'm Steve Sims. I've been with the company for about 15 years and in various departments in the company, both sales, operations, strategy. Our company is based in Charleston, South Carolina, but like a lot of companies, we have employees spread throughout the United States, and I currently reside in the Florida Panhandle.
My name's
you go.
Brian Roosth, and I've also been with the company for about 12 years. Been heavily focused on waste, and like Steve said, I'm actually located in Texas, in Fort Worth.
And I'll just share, Cory, Steve, and Brian really make up a small portion of our entire panel of experts that we have employed across SIB. We lovingly call these three folks our PhDs because they in fact are the PhDs in this particular subject matter across a number of different industries. You're going to hear from them today talking about the industry examples, how we've seen multi-property companies really get cost savings and be able to reinvest in their operations. And so I encourage everybody to grab their email addresses, make sure we follow up, and we'll make sure we get everything to you as follow-up as well. But it's a really strong panel that we've got for you. So I'm going to kick it off and hand it over to you. I think this is, I'll hand it over to the three of you to get started.
Yeah, so I suspect this is why a lot of you are here today, because you're seeing waste costs continue to rise and likely at an accelerating pace. So this slide simply represents one location, and to use easy math, it's a location that spends about $1,000 per month on waste. So historically, absent our company, we see waste costs typically increase between 12 to 20% per year. But in this example, we'll just assume 15%. And waste spend, by the way, when I speak of that, it covers solid waste, recycling, medical waste, organics. There are a number of different waste streams that will encompass. But in this example, after 5 years, the rates have nearly doubled. And there are a myriad of reasons why these costs increase, which we'll touch on in a moment. But next, let's go ahead and talk about some waste trends that we're seeing. So we'll quickly highlight a few waste trends, and then we'll add some color. But this is not a surprise, but the market size in the industry continues to expand with a compounded annual growth rate of about 5.7% worldwide. It's a bit higher in the US or North America at 6.4%. And as with any expanding industry, that will lead to more entrants into the market. More regulatory changes. We've seen lots of those over the years, and increasing innovations in technology. Annual price increases from vendors continue to accelerate, which really started happening during COVID, and that's continued to increase even more rapidly ever since. And then also, rising labor costs and labor shortages continue to provide some headwinds for companies. On other notes, we're seeing a continuation of regulations surrounding organic waste. New York City, for example, completed a rollout of residential curbside organics citywide. And as of this year, they now operate the nation's largest organics waste program. So, you'll continue to see additional cities and municipalities implement these organic requirements. Just like, as the trend started with recycling years ago. In terms of other waste trends, AI is one of the hottest topics in today's world. So, just like in other areas with machine learning, that will start to improve the waste sorting and recycling processes where materials can be more accurately and efficiently sorted versus the old traditional methods. Also, this AI intelligence will move really closer to the collection point as opposed to a sorting area. So, for example, you have smart bins that are and can be equipped with sensors that help to optimize the collection routes for the vendors. So, which that will create some cost savings. Also, there's advancements in robotics and automation, and that will improve speed and accuracy of some of the waste sorting. There's surge in e-waste, so there's more restrictions that are going in place to divert e-waste from landfills. you talk about more data-driven sustainability. This is a really hot topic. So, the waste and recycling companies now are becoming crucial data partners for businesses that really want to enhance their sustainability efforts and provide some detailed insights into waste stream usages. And then finally, you hear more about, the circular economy. Which is emphasis on extending the life cycle of materials through reuse or refurbishment or recycling. So you have less and less one and done approach where something is used only one time and it's disposed of. So that's just a few of the trends that we're seeing. There's a lot more, but I'll turn it over to Brian Roosth and he'll discuss some of the cost considerations.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So wanted to just kind of highlight a few areas here that will then lead into the next slide, which is the case study that we wanted to cover. But to get into it here, what are the best ways for companies to manage and monitor their spend across their portfolio? For any multi-property portfolio, this can be a very difficult challenge. You're going to have different vendors, different contract templates, different sets of services, and monitoring those for what their spend is and tying it back to a contract can be very difficult, specifically in the waste world. And so having all of your data in one place is paramount to that process. And that's actually what SIB does. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is understanding that data. So having it all in one place and then being able to easily access it and reference back to it is a huge issue for a lot of companies. And then how do you monitor for the contract compliance is kind of to my previous point here. Waste contracts can be very difficult to understand. Some of them are 1 page, some of them are 7 pages. Referencing a myriad of different reasons why they may be able to increase rates and stuff like that. And so what SIB is able to do is take all of that data, put our understanding around it, and then translate it to layman's terms that our clients can then understand and know what is actually going on, why they're seeing costs rise, whether that's from a landfill increase or an annual price increase, or is it something that's not allowed by the contract? And then if our clients are finding that they are non-compliance with the contracts, that's also an area where we excel. So on average, it takes the SIB team, when we notice a incorrect charge, it takes us on average 4 touches to a vendor to get that charge corrected. And so that's part of what we take on as our advisor to our clients is, not only are we going to work with you to negotiate better rates and terms for your service with your service providers, but also the ongoing diligence in making sure that those rates remain in place and the vendors are held accountable to what they have agreed to on their contract. And so our team, through a combination of both automatic and emails and actual phone calls to these vendors, we've identified that it typically takes about 4 touches to get an error corrected, which from a client's perspective, if you're operating a multi-property portfolio, whose job is it to spend 45 minutes or an hour on the phone with a customer service agent at a vendor to get $8 or $10 or $12, disputed? So that's part of what we're doing on an ongoing basis, which leads me to the next slide of a real life example. So what we identified here is a very large multi-family portfolio. They own and operate 257 properties across the United States. They use about just over half a dozen different management companies to manage all of those assets in the United States. And when we originally were introduced to them, their biggest issue was there was no visibility into what they were doing at a property level for their waste. So savings is one thing, but also having the visibility into what are our contract terms? What are we doing at a property in Texas versus a property in Florida versus a property in California? And where could we potentially improve? And so as we started to dig into this engagement, what we found was there, across these 6 or 7 different management companies, there was no real consistency in procurement. One management company did it one way, a different management company does it a different way. Not to say those are not, those aren't right or wrong, but there was just no consistency in how things were being executed. From an ownership level, from a macro level, ownership, asset management at the very top, didn't have visibility all the way down to a specific property contractor invoice. And then ongoing, as these invoices were being processed, there was no one really monitoring them outside of normal, cost control, AP processes. And so what we were able to do is come in and put some parameters around this. We were able to come in and renegotiate, establish, first of all, what was important as far as terms and conditions and agreements go for ownership. And then take that into our negotiation process and go property by property, vendor by vendor to negotiate what we believe are best in market pricing along with best in market terms and conditions. And so by virtue of that, we were able to generate about 56% gross savings across a little over half the portfolio. This is still an ongoing engagement. We're about halfway through the negotiation of these properties, but we were able to achieve not only 56% gross reduction, but also streamline their process and procurement, streamline their terms and conditions across all of their vendors, monitor their invoices ongoing, provide reporting and all the way up to the top at a macro level and all the way at the at the property management level at the micro level, what's going on, where we're seeing issues, what can be done to address those issues. And then also ongoing, in addition to monitoring and auditing the invoices, what is the path for renewals? So monitoring and making sure that contracts don't auto renew for an extended period of time. Looking to see, are there other options? Does it make sense to move from dumpsters to a compactor? Does it make sense to go from a compactor to dumpsters? And so these are all things that we're looking at and on an ongoing basis. And with that, I'll turn it over to Cory, who's going to address some of the common landmines that we do see as we get into this process.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so we'll start with some common questions that we get throughout the process. This first one: is it better to have one hauler across your whole portfolio, or will we recommend multiple haulers? So the way we look at this, waste companies are so segmented with how they divide up areas that we typically try to make sure there's multiple haulers out there. Different divisions of the same company are going to provide different pricing and terms, different levels of service. So, we have data all over the country that shows us the pricing we can get with all these divisions, who does a good job, who bills their clients the way they're supposed to be billed. So we typically recommend going with multiple haulers in most scenarios. The next one, we just signed a contract. Our rates are still rising, and I think Brian mentioned this earlier. Contracts with a lot of these haulers really just lock you in for a term, and they don't do anything to protect your rates throughout the contract term. So just because you have a contract doesn't mean the rates that you negotiated are gonna be what you pay for 3 to 5 years. Along those same lines, are we stuck in the contract until the term ends? Is there anything we can do to save money now? And the answer is yes. So just because you have a contract, you're under contract for another 3 years, doesn't mean you can't negotiate some of the terms at that time or remove some of the fees. And there's other ways to save money too, right sizing or making sure all your locations have the level of service they need, not over service or under service, just where they need to be. And then this last one, what are some common landmines that we see in contracts and invoices? So we always try to take first right of refusal out of a contract. It's just a practice that we've always done to basically avoid negotiating with the incumbent every time. And then unchecked price increases. It's a problem with most haulers. And if you don't monitor it, your rates are going to increase by up to 20% a year and more in some cases. Now I'm going to hit that next slide real quick. And then just looking at invoices, when we see an invoice, there's certain charges that raise a red flag every time. And these are some of those that when we see them, it means, that there's opportunity for savings either by adjusting your service levels, renegotiating a contract, but these are, an overflow charge on a dumpster. This is not what you would think it is, with trash bags all over the ground outside of the dumpster. A lot of these haulers, if you have a trash bag sticking out over the top where your lid won't close, you're getting billed an overflow charge. Fuel, environmental fees, most haulers have these on every invoice, and they can add up over time. 45% of your invoice total may be fees associated with a fuel environmental surcharge. Contamination fees, similar to the overflow charges. This is on recycling dumpsters where, maybe a location doesn't know that you're only allowed to recycle paper and cardboard, and are throwing plastics in with those. And every time that happens, these haulers are hitting you with the charge for contaminated recycling. Back to service level adjustments, minimum weight fees. These are on larger containers that we see at a lot of grocery stores or multifamily hospitals, stuff like that. But you're basically getting billed for empty containers. So if you see this charge pop up on an invoice, maybe you're being serviced too frequently, maybe the container's too big. But, just because you have a 30-yard compactor, if you're not filling it up, you're still going to get paid to fill it up. So something to keep an eye on your invoices. And then the rate increases. This is the big one. You sign a contract, there's nothing in the contract that prevents an annual rate increase. You're likely going to get a rate increase every year. Anytime the landfill passes through an increase, they're going to pass that through to the client as well. So charges that we see on a lot of invoices that we try to help with every time we see them. Steve, you want to put them in on some sustainability?
Yeah, let me go back one slide now. Let me make one comment on that. The overflow charges and contamination fees, there has been a significant increase in those charges in the past 3 or 4 years. And I'm sure many of you on this call have seen that. And, and those can really add up, at a $250 per instance charge and more. It doesn't take many of those to really make a difference in your monthly spend and to get out of budget. But so let's talk about some sustainability ESG impacts. Wow, I mean, we could talk at length about this slide, but let me quickly touch on a few items. I'll say for us, initially it was only our larger clients that reached out for sustainability and diversion reporting. Usually these were publicly traded companies that needed to include their waste and recycling practices in their annual reports. But in today's market, and particularly the last 3 or 4 years, that ask and requirement is coming from much smaller companies. And it's no longer something that they would like to do, but it's something that they are required to do, either by their clients and or their capital partners or their investors. So these large, mid-sized companies alike, they need to capture with all their locations, what was their usage by waste stream for solid waste, recycling, organics, sludge, wood pallets, medical waste, hazardous waste, and there are many others. But, in terms of the challenges these companies are running into, it's how they assimilate that data. So if you think about a company that has 50 locations, they likely have a number of different waste vendors across those 50 locations. And if they're getting any type of waste consumption reporting by waste type at all, it's all different. So in that scenario, just consider the personnel resources that it consumes for a company or an organization to put some type of reporting together, not to mention, the complexity and the accuracy of that data. Many companies are required to track this data, but oftentimes it doesn't lead to a reduction in costs. So, diverting waste from the landfill adds complexity and other vendors in the mix. So, many companies struggle with what landfill diversion efforts to implement. So oftentimes it's a delicate balance between adding costs to a site's operating expenses while, trying to meet their sustainability goals and initiatives. I'll give you another example. We talked about contamination costs. Unfortunately, because of the increase in contamination costs that companies are incurring, particularly the last 3 or 4 years, some of these groups simply removed their recycling containers and just decided to only have a solid waste disposal option on site. So now all the waste is going to the landfill. The challenge for these companies and these organizations is controlling what the residents or the employees are throwing in those recycling containers. So the stats say that on average, that 20% of what goes into a recycling bin is contaminated. So despite regular on-site education and signage about what is allowed or what's not allowed in those receptacles, they're still seeing contamination in the bins, which is what leads to the extra fees from the vendors. So next, let's reference back to that slide that shows the increased costs. Here we go, over the years. So we've talked about added fees and charges. The lack of invoice oversight, the lack of contractual restrictions that allow for unchecked price increases. So this chart expands on what we showed earlier. Again, the red line represents unchecked price increases over a 5-year term. Again, we assume 15% in this scenario. And it shows the bottom line, the yellow line, which turns to green, shows an initial 20% reduction, which is about our average that we can affect. And then it shows a price increase over the next 5 years at a much lower annual increase. So you can see in this example that delta becomes more pronounced over the 5 years. So it certainly highlights how important cost caps are, and preferable vendor contract terms are, and oversight of those monthly invoices. And really what you see here is, as the years go by, year 1, 2, 3, and 4, on average, companies are saving more over the term of the agreements because, with our involvement, because of how we monitor those invoices and how we include protections in the contracts. So we'll quickly wrap this up on the next slide. With some end results of our implementation. So in short, with our process, we use our market data, to tackle the procurement process for all our clients' locations with a goal of reducing costs and providing a more predictable spend and more certainty in your budget. Next, our platform provides full visibility and insights into all of our clients' waste data. Their invoices. There's a ticketing system that's related to customer service requests that clients can use to track trouble tickets. We warehouse all of our clients' vendor contracts. And then ongoing, our software reviews every line of every vendor invoice to verify the rates charged by those vendors adhere to the vendor agreements. And we also monitor and mitigate variable charges, which again, that includes overage and contamination fees, which is a significant expense for companies today. And then lastly, we negotiate the vendor contract terms on our clients' behalf to remove those gotchas. We cap the annual increases, we prevent extra charge and fees getting added, and we protect against that cost creep. So with that, we will, I think, hopefully some people have put some questions in the Q&A, and Cory and Brian and I will be happy to take some questions.
We do. I think we have one question. One question that's actually asked on if we're able to provide consolidated data on waste streams or quantities generated when we're working with a client.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that is part of what we're doing on an ongoing monthly basis. We're validating that the vendors are charging correctly. We're also collecting the data, comparing that to what has been contracted, so that when a client does request a sustainability report or a diversion report or an ESG report, you know, whatever the buzzword is, we're able to quickly provide that data, whether it's compactors and roll-offs or front load dumpsters.
Yeah, and a lot of that reporting too is custom, particularly with diversion reporting and sustainability reporting. Some clients prefer to see it on a monthly basis, others on a quarterly basis. Some just need to see it annually. A lot of clients want it laid out differently. So a lot of the reports that we do from an ESG perspective, we do custom.
And a lot of that data that we give to our clients is taken and then put into Energy Star, LEED, or GRESB, or a number of different places that aggregate this data, amongst other things. And waste is just one component.
And actually, I just moved this back because we did have a request just to show this slide again. And there was a question that came up, just to let the audience know. We will be actually sending follow-up with a copy of these slides, and we'll reach out to you just to make sure you've got everything you need. But you should be getting a follow-up as well. We've got some more questions. I think, Cory, I think you've already seen it. So I'll just read it out loud just so everybody has it, in terms of, do we help get quotes from different vendors to get the pricing? You want to take that one, Cory?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, so not always. You know, we have data all over the country that tells us, you know, what the rate should be for certain service levels. We will get quotes from different vendors if we need to, if we're not getting what we expect from the incumbent. But it's not necessary in a lot of cases, just because our database of pricing all over the country with all different haulers is cumbersome, and we rely on that to make sure that the rates we get are competitive in every market.
Yep. And then since you're talking about it, you know, if we've got an organization and that's really interested in new services, you know, and I think Cory, you, Brian, and Steve, any of you can speak to this, you know, if new services are acquired through the vendor, what does that look like, and how do we really help with that process? I know that we do, so I'm going to instead ask, how do we help with that process?
Yeah, so I can address, I guess, on new construction. And I'll let Steve I think I know where Steve's going with the other part, but on new construction, we can help from the very, very early design standpoint. So, you know, what kind of project is being built, what is being planned for trash, and then is it going to work? What are the pitfalls that we've seen from other clients? What works and what doesn't work? Because and the worst thing that can happen is a brand new, you know, building of any type doesn't have a feasible trash solution. And so we can be involved on the front end to, you know, provide some guidance on what works, what doesn't work, what kind of service level is needed, what kind of equipment may be beneficial to that building. And then also, when it comes time for that building to actually open, negotiate the service contract with a vendor to provide the service at that property.
Great.
Yeah,
there you
go. I'll make one more comment, and this may not be specific to the exact question, but you know, as part of our process too, is our platform is looking at these invoices on a month-over-month basis, and it also looks for anomalies. So if we see, back to the overage example, if we see that a particular property has been incurring overages on a consistent basis, say over the course of 2 or 3 months, we monitor those trends. And we'll look at, all right, based upon these overages, does it make sense, based upon the lower price that we negotiated for an overage, to pay for that overage? Or does it make sense to increase the container size? right, or add a service day. So we'll look for things to mitigate, those extra charges going forward. I think Robert also asked, if contracted, what is the standard duration of an SIB agreement arrangement? So typically our terms are 36 months. I think that's important because just reducing rates on the front end, that's a small piece of what we do and what our services provide. So with that ongoing invoice oversight, with us looking at those variable charge anomalies, making sure the vendors are adhering to the contracts, and with a lot of the reporting that we do, particularly groups that are larger, that have lots and lots of locations, that's what they become most accustomed to and like the best about the relationship long term, is not necessarily the cost and price reductions, although people like that. It's really everything else. It's all the value adds that we bring to the table that just aggregates all the data, has everything in one platform, and provides one point of contact for their properties.
Yeah. And I'll just add one thing, Steve, I know that's kind of where we start, especially in this particular area. We tend to have clients that have been with us for many years because of exactly what Steve mentioned. What we're finding is, and really in all of these areas, it's not a one and done type of situation. This area in particular is complex. There are things that are always changing, both in terms of how the vendors are providing the services, the different kinds of structures, and even technology that's coming out there. And we're constantly staying on top of it. So what we often find is that 3-year term is really the starting point. We have folks that have been clients of ours for 6, 10 plus years. It's been a long time. And then we have, I'm going to keep moving us along here. We've got another question here that asks, do we also look at things like smart bins and other changes to the tech of these services to capitalize on long-term savings versus immediate savings? I think you kind of started to get there, Steve, but maybe you, Cory, or Brian want to expand on that a little bit with that in mind.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. If there's any new technology that's out there, which provides a value add or helps mitigate costs, then certainly we'll take a look at. There's been sensor technology, bin technology around for a number of years. Some of it's very good. There's some companies out there that provide that equipment. We have deployed it over the years with some success. It's not perfect, but I think over time that will continue to get better and better, and you'll see a wider deployment of that technology going forward.
Yeah.
Starting to also see a lot of tech in smart bins as it pertains to organics, as organics is becoming a bigger and bigger thing outside of just California. You're starting to see some different solutions there, and just kind of weighing the options in what makes the most sense for a particular property.
Yeah, the organics requirement, it initially started out west, in California, and then it permeated over to the East Coast. I'd use the New York example, but now it's starting to hit a lot of the Midwestern markets and some of the Midwestern markets. And I think we'll continue to see that requirement to grow.
That's a good point. Excuse me. We'll give a couple more minutes, and I do want to just also, just before we wrap up, just share with everybody, because I did forget to introduce myself, and I do apologize. So my name is Anamika. You heard folks call me Nami. I have the pleasure of managing our overarching sales organization here, and I've had the pleasure of working with Cory, Steve, and Roosth, and the amount of insights that I've learned in my time working with them, and just really understanding down to the line item of where we can catch errors that really do add up. And we have stories where we've actually helped folks find opportunities to reinvest the savings that we're realizing into some of their mission critical investments as well. And the 3 of these guys are at the center of it all. So it's great to work here and appreciate it. And please, if you have any more questions, I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. But if not, what we'll do is as we're capturing all of these, we're going to send a follow-up that'll have all of that information. You should also get everybody's contact info, and feel free to reach out. We're happy to do any deeper conversations and talk to you about anything you're interested in related to the matter. All right. So I think, to send us off, Steve, Cory, Brian, if you could give everybody, you know, if they took nothing else from today's conversation, what would be for each of you, maybe your one key point that you hope somebody walks away with? You want to start there, Cory?
Yeah, I can start. You know, waste costs are gonna go up over time, and a lot of that is valid increases from landfill, and a lot of it is just vendors trying to increase their margins. And really, the only way to combat that is to have good insight into your invoices and your contracts across the board. And you heard the challenges of that today, and you know, we've been doing it for a long time, and we know what to look for, and we can help. So that's I'll leave you with that.
Amazing. Steve, Brian?
Yeah, I will say find some way to aggregate your waste data, because that will continue to become more and more important as we go forward for sustainability reporting, because, you know, we're seeing a lot of our clients, it's something that they'd like to do in terms of sustainability reporting, but their clients actually require it by contract, like some property management companies. So they have to have that capability in order to attract new clients and maintain the ones they have. So whatever mechanism it is, find some way to aggregate your data so you can report on it.
And I feel like data is just one of the biggest challenge that we always run into across all the areas that we work on, especially across the different procurement and contract data. So that's great advice. Brian, what about yourself? Anything you want to leave everybody behind with?
You know, I would kind of, to piggyback, Cory and Steve actually took the two things that I was thinking about. So, you know, knowing what is, you know, so I guess I will summarize both of them. Knowing what is and is not allowed by your contract is very crucial, and trash contracts can be very overwhelming. It's just there's a lot of nuances to the business, and so having a good understanding of what is allowed and not allowed, and also being able to access that in a very short period of time is crucial. And so you know, it's nice to kind of be on this side where we know what, you know, what we're looking at. We eat, sleep, and breathe trash on a daily basis, and a lot of these multi-property owners and management companies have they wear a lot of different hats. They've got a lot of things to do. And the common misconception is, you know, as long as the trash is being picked up, then we're fine. But you know, a lot of people fail to see that there is an opportunity to get better rates and better terms.
That is
Brian, next time we'll let you go first.
Thanks.
But that is a great way to close us out. So really, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and rest of your week. We are looking forward to talking with all of you. I really do hope we get that chance, even if it's just to continue the conversation. You'll be getting a follow-up within the next couple of days. Someone from my team will reach out, if not the full team at large. And we'll make sure you get access to all of the content that you've seen here, and looking forward to speaking with you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.